Previously on What is Probability? So we talked about probability, of course. We also talked about your grades and how those are calculated. Then we went on to taking samples, started with univariate and bivariate statistics, and finished with relationships, both causation, correlation, and what happens if it's linear versus exponential versus quadratic. These were the original lessons, and they were all building to how do we use this math in real life. So of course, I gave you a test your knowledge, just a little quiz to quiz yourself on how well you are doing with understanding the statistics. I gave you a YouTube video on willpower, on music, and on manipulation. And you could choose one of these videos and answer 5 questions. Which video you're reporting on, what vocabulary terms do they use that we use in class, what are 2 details given about the study, and what are 2 questions you have about the study that they did not talk about. Finally, you had to vote, do you trust this information? Why or why not? This then led us to current events. Current events are scary right now. They are traumatic for many of us. And I talked about George Floyd. I did not go into politics because that would be silly. I went into statistics and how many people are killed during the process of an arrest. How many are white? How many are not white? How many white people are in America? How many are not white? And then how many Black people who are unarmed get killed by police during the process of arrest? How many police that kill unarmed Black people actually then go to jail? We talked about all of these statistics found online through the government, and that was a lot to take in for current events. What is Probability? Episode 13, Ultimate Finale. Illustrated and narrated by Izzo. Okay, so in the last episode we touched on biases and how you have to remember to get your statistics from a place like the government or somewhere that has .org in its URL. These are a whole bunch of different places where people get information, and most of it is biased. So let's take a look at that bias. We've got the mainstream liberal media. This is the mainstream liberal media. It's very liberal. It's very much the Democrats run it, and they want to convince you to be a Democrat. On the other side, we have the deep conservative media, and they are all Republicans and run by Republicans, and it's Republicans trying to convince you to be a Republican. Be very careful. Some people will say, but I watch Fox News. It's only the news, and it's only sort of right skewed. Some are, but Fox News also has an opinion on its channel, and sometimes they don't differentiate when they're talking about straight news and when they're talking about opinion. As soon as anyone from Fox News gives you an opinion, they're actually doing the deep conservative media opinion. They are talking about Republican views, not about the actual facts. Same thing happens in the mainstream liberal media. Yes, you can watch CNN, and that is perfectly fine if you only do the online news. If you go to the CNN opinions, then that is the liberal media trying to convince you to be a Democrat. Be very careful. These biases will try and trip you up. If you want real statistics, do not go to any of these. All of these are useless. Any of those that you see do not help. Okay, so let's talk about this week's current event, which is defund the police. So what does defund the police actually mean? It means that when we pay taxes to the government sets aside a whole bunch of money, and that money goes only to the police. In one sense, the movement to defund the police is quite simple. It means taking funding away from the police forces across the country. In many cases, a city's country's legislators allocate money in yearly budgets to fund police departments. Defunding the police is just that literal. So, the police right now have a lot of money. The goal is to take some of that money away from the police. However, that's not where it stops. The larger push to defund the police is about more than taking money away. It's a push to reallocate those funds into social programs. So instead of taking all of that money and just taking it away from the police, what they want to do, what this movement wants to do, is take some of that money and give it to schools. So instead of police having to deal with juvenile delinquents, give it to the schools and have the schools deal with juvenile delinquents. That way the police don't have to worry about dealing with kids. Have schools deal with kids. Take money and give it to psychiatrists. That way the police do not have to worry about people with mental problems and mental disabilities. And the therapists can actually help those patients because they have the funding to do so. Give it to social workers, so parents and families who are in a rough time, who need help, can go to social workers and don't end up going to the police, and police don't have to worry about disturbances in the homes. Give those duties to social workers and give the social workers money. And in the same way, give it to the people who are dealing with health. So those would be people who have drug addictions. Give it to people who run rehab centers. Give it to those people. That way the police don't have to deal with people doing drugs. So they take away a lot of what the police does and push those monies into social programs. We still give some money to the police. The police is still there. Defunding the police just means that the police is there, they just have less funds. They don't have the funds that we get from all of the taxes or from certain taxes. Instead, that money and those duties go to other people who are better equipped to handle those situations. Of course, that's what USA Today says. That is not what the media says. As soon as you branch out even a little bit from that center column, you get into this where they are telling you what to believe. It's dangerous and wrong. They are telling you you have to believe that defunding the police is wrong. They're not telling you what it is. They're just telling you it's dangerous and wrong. They will bring in so-called people who know about the situation. These are people who may have very little to do with the situation, but we call them in and then we quote from them as if their opinion is fact. Their opinion is not fact. And then we have the fear-mongering on both sides. MSNBC is very liberal, Fox News very conservative. both of them talking about it's a public safety, it's toxic, it's dangerous. That is making you fear for your safety. Then we have people who turn something into a Democrat versus Republican issue. Don't think about what defunding the police means. Don't ask about what defunding the police means. Notice it is a Republican versus Democrat issue. It's not, but certain politicians will have you believe that it's a Democrat versus Republican issue. This guy says, oh, it's a Republican versus Democrat issue. Well, then let's make it a rich versus poor issue. And then we have defund and disband. Those are two very completely different concepts, but by putting them in the same article, they are linking them in your mind. So they have taken a fact and they have completely distorted what it is and why people want it to happen or don't want it to happen. This is why you have to stay on the center column, particularly when you're dealing with things that are subjective, like if the police should be defunded. However, this happens in statistics all the time. Let's take one idea, and that would be hydroxychloroquine. If you are looking at the American Spectator, which is very conservative, and it starts out talking about this study done in May with a whole bunch of different patients and the findings from that study and how it did not improve anything. It then goes on to say, to anyone who has been paying attention to excellent patient outcomes and findings of well-qualified treating physicians overwhelmingly demonstrated, this makes no sense. So it gives you a statistic, and then it says, but this statistic makes no sense at all. And then they dig deep into the past and they find one that's actually from April, not from May. It's from April. It has way fewer patients, and this one says it's a safe and efficient treatment for COVID-19. There are studies that will prove just about anything, because people do studies with like 5 of their best friends and they can prove anything. So be very careful, particularly when you see a newspaper with different studies and they're trying to tell you that one study is better than another study when it clearly isn't. Now, that is not only done by the Republicans. Democrats have their own issues. Let's take a look at the Jacobin. The Jacobin is a newspaper, very Democrat-oriented, and it talks about initial studies of hydroxychloroquine have shown the drug to be a bust. They don't even talk about the studies. They don't tell me where these clinical trials were, what patients they were, when it was done. They give no details whatsoever. They're just like, we've read the studies, just trust us. It's a terrible idea. Now, it says a bust, and it's highlighted, and it's got that underline, which means it's a hyperlink. So let's click on the hyperlink. It actually comes from Democracy Now!, which is also a liberal site. So this liberal newspaper is getting information from a liberal newspaper. Go figure. In medical news, it talks about a long-awaited clinical trial in China. So this was a trial that was done in China, not in America. So who knows what was happening there. The findings have not yet passed peer review, so these are not for sure findings yet. And it says it has no effect on patient recoveries. So it's not talking about how terrible it is. It's just talking that it doesn't have any effect. What you really want to do is get rid of all of these and talk about something like a USA Today. I know I've talked about USA Today a lot. That's just because it is in the center and it is something that a lot of people put as their home page when they start up their internet browser. Here in USA Today, let's talk about how it talks about hydroxychloroquine, but not trying to force you to take a side or take an opinion. It says hydroxychloroquine has received most scientific attention, undergoing more than 200 ongoing trials. So it's talking about how the trials are still ongoing. Then it talks about negative attention being used, so they had hoped to get a lot of volunteers, but now they only have 800 signed up, so that the study will take months longer. So the study has not been done. A lot of these trials have not actually reached conclusions yet. And then it says that because of the level of enthusiasm for hydroxychloroquine, in the end, it is a murky picture for this drug in particular. Very frequently, when there is a lot of media attention, the conclusions are biased because the volunteers are biased, because the people who are engaging in the trials are biased. So, we've got the very Republican who says to anyone who has been paying attention, here's this one random study that I found from a month ago that, actually it's 2 months ago, that it has way fewer patients, but it's effective, I promise you. Then we have the Democrats saying, just trust us, it's a bust. Yes, it happened in China, and it's not peer-reviewed. It really doesn't have any effect whatsoever, good or bad, but it's a bust. These are very biased, whereas this one is very concerned about the statistics and about the facts, and just presenting the facts and having then you figure out what's happening here. It's talking about ongoing trials. It's talking about how volunteers are lacking and about how the conclusions aren't going to be helpful even when we do get conclusions. That is what you notice in a center. That is what is happening when you look at reports from the center. It will tell you, hey, don't trust anything at this point because it's all useless. Or it will give you very important information. And let's talk about that very important information. So, information that I want to talk about from The Hill, also a center paper. From The Hill, it talks about more than 136,000 people tested positive for coronavirus on Sunday. This is a new apex, and it's not good. It then goes on to say that thankfully 3/4 of those cases come from South America and South Asia. So not from USA, which is very helpful. Then goes on to talk about the death toll and cases on the rise. It does not tell you, oh, you should be voting this person. Oh, you should be voting this person. Oh, this is the cause of this. Oh, this is related to this. No, it just gives you the facts. This is how many people tested positive. This is where they tested positive. This is our damage report for this week. Then I go to BBC. BBC is normally very clear and efficient in telling us what is happening. This one is telling us that hundreds of posts are spreading misinformation about COVID-19, and that some 649 posts were reported to Facebook and Twitter, including false cures, anti-vaccination propaganda, and conspiracy theories. 90% remained visible online afterwards without any warnings attached. So, be careful what you read on social media. I mean, that was an obvious, BBC. That was just obviously don't believe Facebook and Twitter. That's not where you get your information. But it goes through and it talks about the statistics, about how unbelievable Facebook and Twitter can be. About 90% of what you read on Facebook and Twitter pertaining to COVID and how to deal with COVID is not true. So be careful. And then, of course, from my USA Today, I found this while reading USA Today, and it made me so sad, and I had to talk to you about it. In a survey published on Friday, 39% of 502 respondents report engaging in non-recommended high-risk practices, including using bleach on food. Say that again. Including using bleach on food, applying household cleaning or disinfecting products to their skin, and inhaling or ingesting such products. What are people doing? What? Don't drink bleach! What the? The agency also found that many people have limited knowledge for how to safely prepare and use cleaning products and disinfectants. Only 23% responded that room temperature water should be used to dilute bleach, and 35% said that bleach should not be mixed with vinegar. Only 58% of respondents knew that bleach shouldn't be mixed with ammonia. If you mix bleach and ammonia, it lets off a toxic gas that will literally kill you. Toxic being used in a literal sense. It will kill you if you mix bleach and ammonia. Well, only a little over half people know that? Is that okay? Even Squirrel thinks it's not okay. Squirrel, you know not to mix bleach and ammonia, right? Don't mix bleach and ammonia, ever. No matter how tempting it is. No, don't do it. It's dangerous. Good grief. So these are from the center. This is more reliable statistics. I look at these sites because they tell us the facts, they tell us the actual numbers, and then you can interpret for yourself what that means and how to use that information in your real life. The end. So that was the end, the last, the finale. That was the last episode of What is Probability? That was the last episode. On Thursday, I will be posting your last assignment. And then it's summer vacation time.